10 years ago, it shook the nation to its core. The worst terror attack in recent history.
I arrived at the Bataclan with a friend. I saw things I should never have seen, and I hope I'll never see again.
So how is France trying to prevent history from repeating itself?
I try to convince them that violent radicalism won't lead to anything good in their lives, nor other people's lives.
In the face of new and changing threats.
The scope of the work has been extended to cover all types of radicalisation, including far-right extremism, survivalists, incels, and also far-left extremism.
This is a case that arrived this morning. It's a young woman reported by her father. She's 18 years old and converted 2 years ago. She's starting to make slightly worrying statements.
We're at France's first point of call in the fight against extremism.
The father is concerned she's planning to leave France and get married soon, even though she's only 18 years old.
Here, a team of police officers answers calls and online queries from across the country. At the end of the line, worried family, friends, colleagues, teachers, all concerned someone they know could become a national security risk. Today, we've been given rare access to their work. For their security, we're asked not to show their faces. The center opened 11 years ago, when departures to the Islamic State group in Iraq and Syria were at their peak. Pascal, a pseudonym, was there at the start.
In 2014, a mother called to report her son, who wanted to leave. The mother knew he was at a mosque near Paris. She was 3 hours away, and she was calling us distraught because she wanted us to stop him from leaving. Back then, we didn't have administrative travel bans for individuals suspected of planning to join extremist groups. She said, "I'm going to get him," but obviously she was never able to stop him from leaving. He was an adult. It's tough because this mother knew her son was probably going to die in Syria.
They've logged 108,000 calls since its launch. The listening officers glean as much as possible about the person over the phone before analysts search for extra clues.
In France, freedom of religion is a fundamental right, so it's not about taking every convert or every person who has an ideology that the neighbors or family might not like. When there are signs or a succession of signals showing behavior involving concealment, withdrawal, a change in attitude, we take the information and pass it on.
Transferred to intelligence teams and regional authorities who decide if there is a real risk. Islamist extremism remains the #1 threat, but there is growing concern for other movements like incel or far-right extremism.
Unfortunately, you can't stay here because all of our calls are protected by confidentiality. You'll need to leave the room.
Whilst we're with the team, a parent calls because their son, influenced by propaganda, has gone to the Donbass in Ukraine to join Russian forces. Karine Vialat heads up France's counter-terrorism support unit. Today, they have to handle multiple rapidly changing threats. This is her first televised interview.
We're dealing less with the kind of individuals we call hardened, those who have been involved in radicalization for many years and who hold strong ideological convictions. Instead, we're faced with individuals who are sometimes unknown to intelligence services and who can become radicalized quite quickly, particularly through social media.
They've also noticed more young people turning to extremism.
The proportion of minors monitored for terrorist-related radicalization tripled between 2020 and 2025. While it still represents a relatively small share of all individuals being monitored, fortunately, this illustrates the growing prevalence of the phenomenon.
What led me to work on radical and violent disengagement was my own story. For a long time, I was consumed by my own rage, and I expressed it through violence.
Karim Mokhtari has made it his life mission to prevent young people from turning to violence.
I was sentenced at the age of 18 to 10 years in prison for armed robbery, resulting in death without intent to kill. I'm not the person who caused that man's death. I was the instigator of the armed robbery.
Since his release at 25 years old, he speaks out at conferences and in prisons, a fertile ground for radicalisation.
This prison journal is where I gathered all the tools I've been using for over 10 years now to help incarcerated individuals find meaning in their prison time.
It was behind bars that Karim came face to face with a recruiter.
Very quickly, I was approached by a self-proclaimed imam. He was more used to selling weapons and drugs. One day, our eyes met, and he came over to ask me if I was Muslim. I told him no, but that I would like to be. This self-proclaimed imam's preaching was extremely violent, extremely tough. He was adding fuel to the fire already burning inside me, and I was already struggling to find my place in society. I remember this self-proclaimed imam came up to me with a very, very dark look to tell me that I was now a Muslim and that my duty as a Muslim was to defend Islam. And according to him, defending Islam meant that I had to go kill the infidels wherever I found them. It was the first time in my life that I knew how to take a stand by saying no in a determined way. It was the best decision I could have made during my entire sentence, because that is not Islam. I had turned to Islam to stop being violent. He was pushing me towards more violence than I had ever even imagined.
Today, prisoners identified as radicalised are assessed for 15 weeks. Then oriented towards ordinary detainment, solitary or designated zones called QPRs, where they follow a programme that aims to prevent violent extremism. QPRs were one of many new measures rolled out following the attacks.
Resources have been significantly strengthened. Financial and technical means have been put in place to try to prevent attacks.
Mark Hecker has spent more than a decade analysing terrorism threats and France's response.
France has managed to adapt to this threat. Depending on the severity of the case, the response can be either psychological or social support. For much more complex or even dangerous cases, a security-based approach.
Today, prevention is key, and much takes place at a local level. Prefectures have cells that bring together different departments, disciplines, and organisations. But France's strategy has also faced a number of hurdles and scandals.
De-radicalization has a bad reputation. We really need to recognize that. Several programs have been heavily criticized. There have also been articles about the de-radicalization business, accusing certain organizations of making a lot of money off these issues. What should also be noted is that among government actors with a very security-focused approach, some consider that anything related to radicalization prevention, and even more so de-radicalization, is very naive, and that it is impossible to de-radicalize terrorists. Yet some programs continue to be carried out. In fact, they are no longer just experiments, because after several years, they have proven to be effective.
I survived the 13th of November 2015 Bataclan attack.
Bruno Poncet is in Grasse to meet a group of teenagers convicted of minor offences. He's working alongside a terrorist victims association and specialist educators to warn against extreme violence.
On va rencontrer les collègues de la protection judiciaire de la jeunesse, il va y avoir les jeunes.
Combien de jeunes il y a?
Normalement, ils vont être 6-7. Et après, c'est à toi de prendre la parole sur le Bataclan, en sachant que quand il a vécu ça, il avait 7-8 ans. Hein.
Ouais, c'est ça,
7-8 ans, donc il y a peut-être quelques petits souvenirs. Moi, je pose le cadre.
The teenagers are required to follow a week-long citizenship course where they'll meet judges, police officers and terrorism experts.
Perhaps it will allow them to open up a little, become more self-aware, and later develop a different perspective on society.
The workshop takes place behind closed doors at the courthouse. Inside, Bruno won't spare any detail.
The moment that really stand out to them are the explosion. When I explained there were pieces of the terrorists behind me that were running down the wall, or when I talked to them about how, when I went down the stairs, there was a pool of blood, and when I tell them we had to step over dead bodies. So when we talk to them about that, they're really moved, and sometimes you really feel a change in their outlook, their attitude.
For Bruno, it helps heal his past and build a future where he's no longer a victim.
It's complicated, but I hope the initiative can roll out further. That would be really great. The attacks that took place in France in January and November 2015 are now part of French history, so it's good for kids to learn about them at school. Learning about the Middle Ages is important, of course, but learning about this would be a good thing.
A way to raise awareness, but also an act of remembrance for all those who lost their lives 10 years ago.